Welcome to Epilogue Podcast, the show where we discuss some stuff that happened on a different show ages ago which nobody really cares about anymore.
Hi, I'm Portponky.
And I'm LeBloc.
Today, we're discussing Farscape, Season 1, Episode 17, Through the Looking Glass. Moya and her crew get trapped in a multi-dimensional rift.
What did you think of this one?
It's okay. There are things that I don't like about this episode. And
such as?
Okay, how obnoxious it is.
I was curious because I know you watch these with headphones, and one of the areas...
as bad as you imagine is the answer. Yeah,
I figured.
Well, the red zone's fairly bad.
With the dual ghosting.
That's supposed to be, but the blue zone is just super obnoxious. So if you subtract that, I think it's a decent episode.
Decent was the word I was going to use. It's not great, but it's okay. But there are things in here that really annoyed me, and not the blue zone.
There's a few things that I find really memorable about this one. Okay, so I guess it's not that exciting because it's just a sort of constructed disaster that they have to work their way out of, so that's fine.
As mundane as that is, how you just described it, there's one twist on it that I do like, and that's it was as a result of Moya feeling insecure. Moya made this choice, and it turned out bad. It turned out badly. What they could have done was just have them fly into a space anomaly, and then the rest happens as it did. And that's okay, but I like this twist on it and how it involves Moya, and it is a gimmick, but it's different and more interesting than, oh, we crashed into a weird thing.
There's a Next Generation episode called Disaster where they crash into a thing. But with Farscape, yeah, I at this point expect the sort of multi-layered plots. They'd like to weave things together pretty hard, and that's fine. Especially as Moya was trying to prove something and it made it way worse and more awkward and complicated.
It would be a stretch to call Moya a character, at least at this point. I don't know how things progress, but I like these choices.
Okay, so if I ask you, does Moya have no character at all? What would your answer be?
No, she does.
So, yeah, she is a character, I would say. Just either not developed very much at this point or not a very strong character. Maybe you disagree.
No, I completely agree.
Okay.
I just worded it poorly before. I wasn't trying to say Moya is not a character at all. It's just Moya is not developed and has made minimal choices. So it still feels like a ship that acts kind of funny sometimes and not necessarily a character yet, or if ever.
She's a bit like a kind of ghost in the attic or something.
Yeah.
There in the background, but it's such a weird relationship that I'm not sure where they could go with it. Well, I am sure because I know where they go with it, but well, I know the first time I watched this, it just seems like a slightly quirky kind of, almost a gimmick, but not really a gimmick. Having Moya never directly communicate makes it really unclear how sentient she is, I guess.
Yeah, maybe that's it, because there is that detachment, because everything is relayed through Pilot. And now that you pointed that out, I would love if Pilot is just making all of this up and Moya's not saying anything.
Yeah, how would they even prove that?
They can't.
Yeah, I guess. I said there was a few memorable things about this episode. I think the thing that stands out is the super dimensional creature.
Oh, yeah.
First of all, the claw marks, which just sort of scratch through the air. That was cool. And then the prime numbers. That is quite clever. That's quite a solid sort of sci-fi, sort of speculative fiction concept. Because it relies on the fact there's no way to generate prime numbers.
Wait, what?
There's no formula which produces prime numbers.
Oh, okay.
Which means they can't really occur naturally. Well, I mean, they can, but you wouldn't find a tree that always grew a prime number of leaves. Because if that were the case, there would be some functions behind how that tree grows that would produce prime numbers. So that's quite a solid idea. I don't know if they just accidentally chose that, or if they knew exactly how they were playing that, but that's a solid sci-fi idea.
I thought that was a something scientists actually do, where they throw out into space the Fibonacci sequence or something.
Well, see, you've made a mistake already, because the Fibonacci sequence can be generated.
Oh, shoot.
For example, if you get a pineapple, the number of segments on it will be a Fibonacci number. Pretty much. Or a cauliflower as well. And not like the total number, but the pattern it generates is the Fibonacci.
That's why they're so delicious.
Yes. That's why I always get cauliflower and pineapple pizza.
It's a winning combo.
But, yeah, do we send out prime numbers into space? Maybe.
I don't know. I think that's a thing.
The other part of that as well is when he goes to visit the multi-dimensional being.
They did something we asked for in a previous episode. Make the alien more alien instead of a giant cricket.
Yep, this guy was actually just incomprehensible.
Which is great.
That's the expected result. Oh, I visited a 10-dimensional alien today. How was it? Yeah, it's a great guy. Showed me around his house. No, it was a headache, and space and time were meaningless.
Oh, yeah, I liked how when he came back, everyone was confused. Oh, you couldn't possibly have had conversation.
It's a nice little thing to throw in there. They could have skipped that and it would have been just as good, but it makes it seem like they really thought about some of the things in this episode.
Agreed. That whole sequence felt really alien because we had just the way we see John experiencing it. There are all these images of him layered over one another, and it was kind of incomprehensible, and time was meaningless. It was good.
It reminded me of Flatland, and how if you pick the Flatlanders up into the third dimension, they could suddenly see through walls and stuff. To us it's obvious, but to them it would just be incomprehensible. At the same time, they did get a bit techno-babble-ish.
With the riffs and stuff?
Yeah. I wouldn't really say they got techno-babbly, because that's something that they seem to avoid on Farscape. But they did raise questions which were worth raising. For example, I think it's John asks Pilot, why were we sent around but not other people?
Oh, right.
And Pilot says something about relative densities.
That's when John is standing right next to Pilot, right?
Yes. Unless I've remembered it all wrong.
Anyway, I want to talk about that scene and how distracting it was.
Uh-huh.
So, first of all, I like that we get to see Pilot, not just through the little communicator thing, and seeing the actual puppet right on camera. That's fun. I wish they had more excuses to do that. It makes more sense just to see Pilot through the communicator all the time. But so that's the good part. The bad part, or at least the part that ripped me out of it, was part of Pilot's fin kept hitting John, and animals have really good awareness of their bodies. For example, bulls can navigate through a narrow hallway and they won't scrape their horns all along the sides. And it kept happening. And then the actor for John was trying to make, that guy. He was trying to make it not as awkward, but so I was so focused on looking at him and him trying to avoid Pilot's head. And that's just a result of the person doing the puppetry not being able to see John. And so that it reminded me, oh, this is not an alien creature talking and having a conversation. It's a bunch of dudes or gals operating this thing. And so it ripped me out of that moment, and I missed a lot of what was being said because I was so focused on that.
The conversation was a bit forgettable. Yeah, a space thing happened to us. We're on a space adventure. Okay, let's go. I have to say, I did not notice that John was wrestling Pilot. We'll go back and watch it again and then find out it was the most minor thing.
It's entirely minor, but I don't know. I picked up on it, and he's not totally successful in trying to pretend it's totally normal.
You don't know that Pilot has good spatial awareness, though.
Yeah, I know that's a huge assumption on my part, but it happened. It happened more than once, so you would think Pilot would touch him and think, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. That's a little weird." Or maybe that's part of his species. They touch heads when they when they talk.
They ripped his arm off, and he was like, "Oh, ow! Wish you hadn't done that." So, who's to say?
There was a part, another part that I really didn't like, and it's also incredibly minor.
Oh yes.
So when Pilot is listing off where people are, or at least where it says the readings say they are, he says Dargo and Dargo in, and then Chiana finishes competent, as in incompetent.
Yeah.
How that doesn't make any sense. That would only work if they're speaking English. How would that translate over directly?
It's a multilingual pun.
No.
The Pilot language was also the same as the Nabari language for incompetent, which also works in human.
No. Nope.
So if Pilot just said Dago is in, and then Shadow just said, "You're an idiot," that would have made more sense, right?
No, none of it would. You can't do play on words like that.
Well, you could do it, just wouldn't translate back. So she just shouted, "Yeah, you're an idiot." Oh, sorry, in Nabari that was a really cutting pun, but
that would have been great.
Every other language, it just sounds like unwarranted abuse.
If she blurted out something that made no sense, and then everyone stares at her, and she says, "Oh, well, it made sense in my language." And then a similar thing happens later in the episode when John says green knob, and then she echoes back green slob, I think. Whatever she said.
She's joking about Rigel.
Yeah, she was rhyming with a different word. You can't do word stuff like that. It doesn't work.
Coincidentally, Nabari language is exactly the same as English.
No!
They don't know this, though, because they assume it's being translated.
But then that also has to match Pilot's language.
No, because that got translated to in both Nabari and English.
Oh, okay.
That's my excuse. No, yeah, you're right. It shouldn't. But I think sometimes it's better not to constantly bring up linguistics. I know you would probably like that, and I'll be honest, I would probably like it too. But I can understand how it would impact a primarily action sci-fi show if it just constantly descends into arguments about linguistics.
That would be my dream.
I know, it would be amazing. There was one thing that happened that was quite funny.
3 Meppa Pippi?
There were 2 things that happened that were quite funny. The Mippa Pippi. I'll be honest, I've been using that to time seconds since I saw this episode years ago.
That scene had me curious. Is that a thing outside? I don't see why it would be, but is that a thing outside of the US where people use Mississippi to count off seconds?
There's a video, I think it's by Numberphile or Tom Scott or someone, about the variants of this. I know Mississippi is commonly used in the United States, but I've also heard that here in the UK. Another one we get is elephant. 1 elephant, 2 elephant, 3 elephant.
Oh, okay.
There's a video that goes into all the variants. But yeah.
I was so curious how that hit your ears, because that is totally normal to an American.
Yeah,
so that wouldn't stick out at all.
It was fine. So it wasn't that I was going to mention. It was at the end when John raises a toast.
What about it?
He raises his glass, and then Togo just takes the glass and says thanks.
Oh.
He has no idea what a toast is. He just thought John was giving him a glass of something to drink. So for every time they don't bring up a linguistics argument, it seems they pay us back with a sort of sociology argument. Is that sociology? Is that the right term?
I have no idea, but that reminds me that when in the Blue Zone for the first time, John gives Aaron a thumbs up. But I bet he's done that.
She gives him a thumbs up, actually.
Well, he does it first.
Yeah, she does one back.
But I could see him having done that way before now, because he's a thumbs up kind of guy. So he probably taught her that somewhere along the road, the space road.
I could imagine it's possibly a universal thing if you have opposing thumbs.
I don't know about that.
Or if that was argued, I could at least buy into the idea that it could be universal. I'm not going to claim that it is, because obviously I have no idea.
Sticking with that scene, I wish they didn't have as much dialogue actually audible as they did. I would have loved if we had to rely on the actors miming stuff. I loved John, how he communicated Rigel, how he pushed his hands small and then made a face. I immediately knew what he was talking about. But then, just to be safe, you could hear him say Rigel. But I wish that wasn't even in there.
I agree. And at the same time, I think the headsets were a bit of a cheap out for that one. At first, I thought it was a dimension where sound simply didn't work properly. Like the fundamental concepts behind acoustics and vibration just didn't propagate properly. So hearing was just impossible. But no, apparently you can figure it out with a headset.
It did seem silly. And then it completely nullified that area.
This is a very brave show. They do a lot of stuff that's quite daring. So I can understand that they didn't go the whole hog. If the whole episode was about that kind of acoustic mess up, then yeah, they definitely should have gone like Buffy and done the whole episode without any audible dialogue. But it seems it's just one dimension and they kind of cheaped it out. Fair enough. Chiana found the different dimensions quite different.
I do not like hearing her be tortured. and in pain. She's too convincing, and it's uncomfortable.
I'm glad that John just ran her to the drop point straight away.
Yeah, that was good.
And our old friend Slow-Mo returned.
Well, it makes sense here. They're being compromised in various ways.
If you want to show someone running fast, you show it in slow motion. I'm guessing that Ben Browder, muscly though he is, probably doesn't really run that fast whilst carrying another person. Like, it's not going to look super elegant. So I understand they just put it in slow-mo, so it looks like he's running very fast.
I don't know if this was intentional, but they left it in after it happened. When she knocks the Rigel painting, when John is carrying her.
Oh, yeah. We have no way of knowing if that was intentional.
It would be silly if it were. All right, before you set her down, I need her to hit the painting. It looked natural, regardless.
But the painting was set up earlier in the shot, when the first time John came through, so it's really it's in your mind.
Yeah, it does have prominent
So maybe it was
placement.
set up. The magic of filmmaking.
Damn, it probably was set up. I was fooled.
Well, again, we don't know.
I think so.
Who knows? Moya's baby is coming soon.
It would have been way too sad and dark if the baby died.
Yeah, that would have been the worst.
Or if Moya deliberately killed the child so that they could survive.
That would have been terrible. When Pilot even suggests sacrificing the baby, John and Zan are just like, no.
I like how adamant he was.
Yeah, because he's not a sociopath. Who would say yes to that?
Yes, please, kill off the baby. Even though we don't know if that'll solve our problems, just go ahead to be safe.
John is a human. He's just got all the regular human failings, like empathy.
And a strong jaw.
And a recipe for cookies, which he somehow prepared without any of the ingredients.
I don't know what to make of that part.
What did he do?
Yeah. All right. So he had none of the ingredients, not even one. Still called it by the original recipe. How do you know what is equivalent or even close? I don't understand.
So he needed flour. Did he just go around and find like a fine white powder, maybe taste it, make sure it's not salt or something, and say, yeah, that could be something like flour?
This is edible, I think.
Honey, Looks a bit like engine oil.
No part of that makes sense. I guess that's the joke.
Well, presumably he did attempt to do it in some way with some intelligence behind it.
But if you don't have any of the original ingredients...
Yeah, he did a really good job considering that. Because
they're lucky they can even eat it.
Well, if he just used foodstuffs, then I guess you'd make something that is basically edible, in that you could eat the ingredients, right? And this is just them combined. But it did look roughly like a cookie. It didn't taste good, but I mean, he's halfway there. He's a smart guy. Smart cookie. There you go.
Oh man, I was going to be amazed if you did not take that low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. Have you selected a quote from this episode which you would like to share?
Shall I disrobe so it's memorable?
Oh yeah. That's such a weird line.
I love it. I cracked up.
That actually made me laugh as well. I'm pretty sure it did every time I've seen it. because it's just so off center. Like when they do these kind of things where people are in hysterics for some magic reason, often it's kind of awkward and unconvincing.
Yeah.
I thought they did a really good job of the funny dimension, because that's the sort of thing that can fall flat really hard.
So the way that dimension was introduced, I took it as they're not actually saying funny things. It's just everything becomes funny. And then, so I didn't expect any actual funny lines to come out of it. And then, shall I disrobe so it's memorable comes out of Rigel, and it's legitimately funny.
Yeah, it's just a good mood dimension.
Yeah. He's so serious about it, too.
Let's move on to the next episode.
Yes. Let's do that. And shall we disrobe so it's memorable?
Disrobe.
Yeah.
I never wear clothes whilst podcasting.
Okay.
Let's end it here.
Podcasting is the only time I wear clothes.
Ah, right, yeah. So that means between us, we're carbon neutral.
It's for the benefit of our readers.
I think we should stop.
Okay.
We've said enough. We've said too much.
I apologize for my strengths.